Jeff Megowan. I was born here, raised here, and currently live here. And before I get started, I just want to let everyone know I want my shirt back. I lost that in '77, lost and found at the school, and I've been looking for it ever since. I also can claim putting charges on Don and Dick Milam's account at the market as well. Can everyone see that all right? All you have to do is hit that. You know, there's an old saying that yesterday is history, and today or tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. And that's why they call it the present. And, you know, 10 days ago when I got asked to do this, I was reflecting, and I really didn't think there was much history to be talked about on Edgewater. And the true gift of this presentation is the fact that I've learned a lot about myself, reconnected with the community and friends, and it's been a true gift. And the other gift is reconnecting with one of the longtime residents down on Edgewater, Don Frankie. I've known Don probably for 35 years and never really knew him until literally the last 2 Thursdays and up until 2:30 in the morning last night. Literally. So just, that's the gift, and I appreciate being here. I'd also like to thank Esther, HM Power, for picking up the phone and giving me some information. She was basically the records keeper for 7 years of all our history and has put a lot of work and effort into Terrace Park history. So I wanted to thank her. Now, there is quite a bit of history with Edgewater, and it all comes down to Section 22. All right, so Section 22, this property, what we're talking about today is this area right here, 102 acres, okay? And then later, this little lot over here, which is now the Lindell Smith Farm, that was also purchased by the Leaf family. So the Leaf family, in researching the Leaf family in a place called Terrace Park or any other documents, there's really no history on Michael T. Leaf. And if you think about it, it's a tragedy because, you know, next to Mr. Biggs, Michael T. Leaf is probably one of the largest landowners of Terrace Park. And Esther Power also thought that, and she did a paper on Michael T. Leaf called A Leaf Land Down Under, and it's available online on the historical website. But prior to Michael T. Leaf, you know, the property, and I'm not going to bore you with property, but it exchanged hands with many of our famous names from our history of Terrace Park. You know, from John Cleve Sims to Abraham Covalt to John Smith to Zach Biggs. You know, they all changed hands on this property. Later, John Kugler, which I'm assuming would be the Kugler Mill John Kugler, who actually lived in the Millcroft Inn as you cross over the Milford Bridge right there on the left. That was Mr. Kugler's house. He owned the property for a while. And then we're dating back, you know, I'm talking like 1875 type of stuff. Well, in 1924, this property exchanged hands after Michael T. Leaf to a guy named Mr. Hodges in 1924. And then after 1924, this whole land kind of remained a mystery because there were really the deeds and the property lines. It is truly a mystery still today. One thing I did this week is I bought title insurance. Seriously, not kidding. I recommend it if you live on Edgewater, buy title insurance. So it is interesting history down there. But from 24 to 45, it is a complete mystery. There's no records of actually who owns the property. Well, thanks to Don Frankie, we have a good idea of who owns the property from 24 to 45, and it was the Jansen family, which I'll get into a little bit. This is the Edgewater area. basically that's number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Our place 7 was over here. The Hayes', which is funny because it's 6 actually is Hayes and mine's 7, so it goes it's a kind of all messed up. But the history here is the club. So there actually was a Edgewater club. I had no idea. I found it digging through maps at the Historical Society in the 2-hour window that I had a couple Thursdays ago. But the club, in 1897, Michael T. Leaf actually rented it to the Merry Bachelors of Cincinnati. Okay, now who would like to be there with the Merry Bachelors in 1897? I can imagine what was going on there. It exchanged hands. It became the Crescent Nook Fishing Club, which was probably just great because if you think about this property back in the day, it was all about, a retreat, pretty much. And we'll get into that. In 1902 to 1919, it was the Spotless Town Club. Not sure exactly what that is, but I'm sure we could do an hour presentation on that club alone. Next slide. So this is the Edgewater community, same property we've been talking about, and you'll notice the close association with the groves. Okay? The Miami Groves have been well documented. People have spoke on the groves in the past. And the Edgewater community was completely separated from the groves and really completely separated from Terrace Park. These properties weren't even considered Terrace Park. And we talked about the mail, the post office earlier. Edgewater didn't even exist until the 70s when the postman just made it up, is what I've found out. And I could be wrong on that, don't quote me, off the record. But this property was annexed around 1940. And I don't know about the Edgewater, but I'm assuming the close association, it was probably annexed around the 40s as well. Terrace Park took control basically to try to get out some of the clubs down in the Grove area. They actually purchased it in 1957. I don't know if it was pre or post flood of 1957, but that was right around that time frame. Now, Edgewater was a beautiful place to live. Now, don't let this sign scare you, okay? It is a private drive, and it always has been private, and it always will be, because that's what the spirit of Edgewater is all about. It's about a private community, and we welcome you by all means. Even though the past may not have been so welcoming to the people along the river, but we're willing to rewrite history and invite people down. We understand now that it's probably the premier street in Terrace Park. And if you haven't seen it, then you probably don't know what I'm talking about. So come on down. Okay. Now, this was our house, and we moved in 1979. Don't judge a book by its cover, because this is the greatest place in the world. There's a little root cellar here. For back in the day, keep ice in the summer and your stuff warm in the winter. And I saw the paper mentioned stilts. There really weren't stilts. Maybe the porch was, but we had actually a foundation. So do all the houses down there. These are really nice houses. And the next pictures are kind of a characteristic of the quality of class that was down there. This is my mom. She's mad because I put this picture in here, but she just was hot. She was hot in '79. Look at her. Beautiful. And you still are, Mom. Why are you mad? Don't be mad. I'm sorry. Don't be mad. This is how great our house was inside. It was French doors, it was transoms. This right here is a hand-blown light from Germany. My buddy Bill Everhart is a research fanatic, and he looked it up as actually a famous hand-blown piece of glass from a guy in Germany. Wood beams, just class all the way. It's great. The fireplace. Now, this isn't representative of how we decorated. This is when I was moving out and getting ready to tear the house down, so things weren't tip-top. Everything in the kitchen was knotty pine. It was just beautiful. I come back to the fireplace because my whole house design, the reason I came back to Terrace Park to raise my family, and kind of make my own history, was based around this fireplace, because it was the greatest fireplace in the world. And this picture doesn't do justice. It was humongous. You could actually crouch down in here if you wanted. And it did. It kept the house warm. The great thing about the stilts is, by the way, I sneak out of here, Mom, all the time. Mrs. Frankie last night at 2:30 in the morning was reminding me about that. I remember when you used to come out here and climb down here and hang and jump and run. We won't get into that though. But the stilts were great because you could park a car under here, you could put your John Deere under there, and you could, in all honesty, hypothetically speaking, not that I ever did it, you could put the entire Marymount High School class of '86, a 4-piece band and 3 kegs under there as well. Yeah. So it was a great place. And the best part about it is obviously the view. The view cannot be beat. It is a reflection of why people and the whole community was built, is the love for the river. You know, that's really what makes Edgewater is the river. It's a love-hate relationship between the river, because you have to deal with it. And thank you for going on babbling. This is actually the club. So the club is located, where am I? Oh, it's upside down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the club is why the whole community was kind of built. Michael T. Leaf, he envisioned, you know, up to Michael T. Leaf, it was all a farm. It was farming property, and that, as a matter of fact, some of the property down on Edgewater, even in, or as late as the 80s, was still being farmed. But it was Michael T. Leaf that had a vision to basically grow all this area as a recreational means for finances. You know, it was a rentable, leasable situation that made him money. So this was the club that we talked about, and actually later on the Jansons did live on the first floor, and they rented out the second floor, among owning a lot of property along this side too, and actually later on everything from Hodges and 24. But this was a really good place. I've snuck in there a couple of times as a kid, you know, just to check it out, and it was beautiful. It had wine cellars and nice woodwork, and Mr. Jansen himself was by trade a heating guy. Then became heating and cooling, but back in the day they didn't have air conditioning, so he was just the heating guy, but he was also a carpenter. And you know, he did a lot of work on the properties, not only here, but Carol's house on number 3, and our house, and the Frankies. I don't know about the Hayes', but well-known carpenter. This is Don and Fran's mother's home. This was one of the oldest homes, along with Carol's. Number 2 and our place, number 7, were actually built, one of the first houses built in 1917. I think Carol's might have been 1916. But this is where Don Frankie, after graduating from Withrow in '47, moved in, and actually, well, next slide. This is Carol's house. Just an unbelievably gorgeous cabin. It's just a slice of paradise. I mean, it really truly is. Next slide. This is Don's house. Now this is not reflective of what it looked like back in the day. I mean, it was just a beautiful piece of property. Unfortunately, it burnt down. But when Don married Fran in '57, Don's mother actually bought this property, and it's right there, and gave it to him as a wedding gift. There was 2 houses next door, 5 and 6. And it was number 5. We won't get into what happened, but basically it caught on fire and burnt down, and actually caught the Frankie's house on fire and burnt down as well in '77. So Don had to rebuild his house, and that's what was rebuilt in 1977. Now here is the, if I quit right here, this is why I'm here today, is because of Don Frankie. And the Terrace Park, really the Edgewater community owes Don Frankie a great piece of gratitude, because if it wasn't for Don Frankie, there would not be an Edgewater, period. Because Don Frankie, not only, he's just a well-accomplished man. He was the village clerk. He has a master's degree in sociology from University of Cincinnati. He completed everything except for a dissertation for a doctoral degree from Michigan. Okay, this is a smart guy. And I won't get into why he didn't finish this, but it was mainly out of pride. He was two-time president of the Little Miami Inc., or Little Miami Incorporated, and as president, along with Robert Taft Jr. and some shady characters that maybe had some gambling connections back in the day that lived on Edgewater. He put a kibosh in, I think it was 1970, on Route 50 corridor running right through Edgewater. They were going to push Edgewater into the river and run a corridor right through there. It was going to take up part of the country club and connect with 275 down on the Red Bank corridor, now what they're trying to do in Megowan. So that whole idea is not going away. It's always been here. We just keep pushing it to different communities. So Don single-handedly saved Edgewater. Okay? This right here, I put it in here, but after last night, it should not be taken out. He was not head of UC Pharmacy. That's a different Don E. Frankie. That the historical society just made a mistake. Next slide. This is number 6. This is the Hayes property. This is a big part of my history because of the characters that lived here. When I first moved in, I had to carry a big TV up the steps. And I ran over to this house because there were 2 young guys that lived there, and I thought they would be able to help me out. Well, these guys were pretty fun. Seth Hamilton was his name. And I confirmed it later on through the Tritch family that one of the older Tritch boys was hanging out with this Seth guy. But Seth, I don't think his parents were there. I just think they let Seth live there. And he graduated from Megowan in '79. So he was a senior when I moved in. They didn't have electricity. All of this was gravel road. He would drive around in circles, do donuts in his car. And he actually crashed his car and it went into the river because they had to come down and pull the car out. So, but no bigger character lives there than currently, the Hayeses. There she is, right there. Raise your hand. I'm kidding. Greatest community in the world. It is just beautiful having the Hayeses next door. One of my also favorite people in the world that lived there was Holly Hughes. And Holly Hughes was Holly Commissar. And Holly Commissar married, Mom, help me out, what's his first name? Charlie. How can I forget that? Yeah, I love Charlie. So Charlie's Ye Old Renovator. Do you see that in the village views? That's Charlie Hughes. Well, just phenomenal family. She just actually passed away, which I don't even want to talk about. I'll get emotional. Okay. This is the view from the back. Just every day is a summer on Edgewater. Mom, help me out here too. This, okay.
That's Carl and Edith
Edith Lidner.
Edith Ann is not with him right now. I don't see her.
Which one was this?
That's Carl.
Carl. All right, Carl. Holly is a character. She was one of the greatest people in the world, but Holly had pet ducks. And these pet ducks would torment my mom. They were like watchdogs. They literally would monitor the street and guard you from your house. I mean, they were mean little ducks, but I love them, so I had to put them in. Yeah. Now, okay, I could probably stop the presentation here because for history, for ages, Miami Avenue has been dragging down the property value of the Edgewater community. we've complained about it, we've taken it up to the police, but it just continues today. This is actually Julie Douglas's house now, Julie Kippens, who is Flack Douglas's daughter, who grew up in the circus house. So I just wanted to put that in there. Next slide. This is 901 Miami. 901 used to be 903 because the plots back then ran vertically like this. After later on, when like the Snyders and Mr. F came in, they relined everything this way. So that's why the addresses are kind of messed up there. But the Jansons lived here, and this actually isn't the existing Jansen house because back in the day they didn't even ask for permits. They just built whatever they wanted to build. But that's the Jansen property. This right here is 902 Miami. This is where, I just want to point this out. This is a pretty cool historical house the Hattons lived here, and the Hattons were also carpenters and tradesmen that built a lot of Edgewater. You'll notice that there's this is probably late 70s when we moved to early 80s. About 10 cars, a bunch of junkers, tire, above ground pool. This is where the Thighs live now. Does anyone know the Thighs?
Yeah.
So you can tell it hasn't changed at all. I mean, it's still a wreck down there. The only thing that's changed is it's a now Porsche, Yukon, Mercedes, BMW. So, and this was mini bike heaven, and all the noise and racket came from over here, and it hasn't really changed now. It's just Nolan jumping on the trampoline. This is a hilarious piece of property, 906 Miami. I had this one judged all wrong. This was Mrs. Williams. Mrs. Williams was a landowner, not only here, but a couple other properties down there. And she owned, if you ever walk down to Edgewater and go past the gate, she owned that big field, like when you get to the nature preserve. I mean, probably 5 acres, I'd imagine. I'm not sure exactly. Also, Gigi and Nat Commissar lived here for a while, and now Bob Tritch owns it, and he is preserving it, his own little sanctuarium down there. Also, I'd like to, back in the 70s, I think it was, the village wanted to buy all this property and to put the soccer fields down here. So, Mrs. Williams let her dogs out, and the village never got their way. Now, I don't know if I want to get into this, but this was some of the coolest thing. And this is a 1920 census that shows one of the descendants of Michael T. Leaf. Can't remember, I believe it was Andrew. And he was married to Ophelia. And Ophelia, he was in a band, and she was a social worker. And they lived somewhere on Elm. We can't figure it out, because back then, they didn't even mark the addresses down. They just went straight down. So, if you notice, there were like inmates living with the Leaf family somewhere on Elm. And I think since she was a social worker, they were probably wards of the state or something. But 2 of the inmates is Frank and Catherine Malott. Now, the Malott family, they lived on Edgewater in the clubhouse for years. And they also lived in Carol's house. And when I was growing up there, I remember Cindy and Lou Malott. They were being raised by their grandfather. And so I tried to reach out, Facebook, is everyone familiar with Facebook? The social media where you can communicate with people who have long lost past. I reconnected with Cindy Malott, and after I brought this up, the communication dropped. So I don't know what's going on, but her great-grandfather, she thought her name was Frances, which there's a Frank. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's something that I'm going to investigate. And to be quite honest, I've loved doing this so much that I'm going to dedicate myself to being Edgewater's little historian. And since you like that, what we're going to do is the full presentation will be held at 50 West Brewery. $10 a pop to get in. Is everyone familiar with 50 West? Do you remember the, what was the restaurant? Heritage. Well, we grew up in the Heritage because my mom worked for a radio station, WLYK, and Warm 98, Q102, WEVN. And she also wrote jingles for the Melvins, Mom?
Melvins.
The Melvins own the Heritage, so we spent quite a bit of time there. And actually, Lisa, our first date was at the Heritage. But Tina Hesser's son is running a new a microbrewery out of there. And it's a beautiful place to go. On a Thursday night, they have jazz, and it's all ages. It's great. It's cool. Next slide.
Commission?
No, yeah. But in conclusion, Edgewater community is a hidden oasis. Next slide. With a great view. This is actually from our backyard back.
It's a lovely view.
The other arrow.
I can't.
That's all right. There's a lot of wildlife down there. This was great. We had the whole community over looking at this in our backyard one day. I mean, just I woke up, I saw a bald eagle just swipe the fish right out of the river, and he landed right in that tree, and he didn't move for like 2 hours.
Wow.
But fox, blue heron, deer. It's very, obviously nature-friendly place next to a nature reserve. Next slide. It does get a little crazy. Floods happen, and this is my backyard. At one point, not even so long ago, like maybe 2000, well, Lisa and I actually put a canoe in, it went straight down. It was just like a sloping bank. And this is what I'm dealing with now. Sometimes you have a need for elevation. That's my back porch, so I got pretty close that year.
Wow.
But what a great place to raise a family. And future warriors. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.